up in the spirit of the season, the spirit of love. Make a difference with your friends at KBLA Talk 1580.
That's PE, Public Enemy, Fight the Power. And I'm not sure if that's Luigi Mangioni's theme song, Fight the Power, but what he did last Wednesday has caused a stir in this country. And we were talking to one of our guests the other day about the ways in which the mainstream media is covering this story and the ways in which it's being discussed by everyday people in social media. And you are not getting the same. Those things do not align. Let me put it that way. Because everyday people are having their say, and it seems that everybody hates these insurance companies. And so we were talking, of course, in our first hour with Ryan Grimm about the ways in which NYPD and law enforcement writ large are concerned about whether or not, say nothing of the CEOs themselves, concerned about whether or not this is going to make Mr. Mangione a martyr, and others will try to emulate or copy what he has done, given that there are a whole lot of people who, again, dislike, have disdain, frankly, for these insurance companies. And so it's a developing story, which I find utterly fascinating, given that there are very few things. Think about this. This is the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever. Clearly, we are divided in our politics and just about everything else. But there's one thing that we all seem to agree on, and we hate these insurers. And so it's a rare thing to sit in this chair, which I do every day, and find yourself in conversation about an issue on a regular basis, at least while this story still has legs, where everybody seems to agree that these insurers are just out of control. And the question is what ought to be done about it. But there is fear, you better believe. It's palpable indeed, this fear that I sense in these suites, C-suites, if I can say it, C-suites all across the country. That said, in this hour, two conversations as promised. On the backside of this hour, we'll talk about Donald Trump's efforts to weaponize state power. We know he has the federal reins, but what are his plans to weaponize state power to engage and advance his radical policies? What is the plan? What does the pushback look like? We'll talk about that on the B side of this hour. But we commenced this hour, as promised, in conversation with Tracy McMillan, journalist and author of the book, The White Bonus, 5 Families and the Cash Value of Racism in America. I invited Tracy back on this program because we had her on when the book came out, a beautiful book, powerful book, arresting book. But we had her on when the book dropped, but I wanted her back on now because there's a particular chapter in her book, chapter 7, as I recall. There's a particular chapter in this book where she goes into great detail about her own family story. And so I wanted her on here for a few minutes to talk about how the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson has reminded her of her own family's battle against insurers on behalf of her mother, who finally succumbed 9 years after sustaining a traumatic brain injury in a car accident. Now, you just heard me say in the last hour, in our first hour today, that there's a huge story today in USA Today that details all of the posts that Mr. Mangione, under a different name, was pushing out on Reddit about all the pain that he was enduring after his own accident over a 10-year period, all the pain that he was feeling, which in part, I suspect, led to, if you believe his notebook, his writings led to what he did last Wednesday. So there are millions of Americans who suffer from all kinds of chronic pain. I bring into the conversation now Tracy McMillan to tell me about her mother. Tracy, how are you today?
I'm doing all right, Tavis. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing the best I can. If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. You know me. I'm just trying to power through. I've got about 2.5, 3 minutes here now. Let me just use these 3 minutes to ask you to tell me about your mother, about the accident. Let's lay that groundwork first, and then when we come forward, we'll unpack what she had to endure and all that your family had to endure fighting on her behalf with these insurers. I got 3 minutes now. Take it away.
Sure. So in 1984, my mom was driving home with my sisters who were in preschool at the time, and a drunk driver crossed over the line and hit her, right? So she got a traumatic brain injury. And within about 6 months, doctors were writing dementia in her files, right? So this is a middle-class white lady in sort of like rural Michigan, raising her kids, and, gets hurt. And for the next 9 years, we had to fight with insurers over whether or not her care should have been covered, right? Because it was in a car accident. Mm-hmm. And so what ends up happening is the first 7 years, it's getting to trial. We get to trial. The jury says, yes, the car accident made this worse. It should have been covered. And then the company appeals, and we end up appealing, right, sort of going through courts for a few more years. And during those few years, my mother has absolutely no formal coverage, sort of gets shunted into bad nursing home after bad nursing home, deteriorates, and dies. And 40 days after she dies, the courts ruled that she should have had insurance the entire time, right? And so I think this is a story that a lot of folks will identify with, right, because it really tracks with how insurance companies just keep delaying and delaying and delaying and pushing off without any regard for what they're supposed to be doing, let alone what it means for people, right, who are depending on them to help them get well.
I'm going to pull this clip and give it to my producers and tell them to give this to every guest that I ever talk to for the rest of my career about how to answer a question. That's how you do it. I asked her in 3 minutes to tell me what happened. That's why Tracy McMillan is a brilliant writer, a brilliant journalist in her own right. She went right to it, and now you understand the frame that we are in. After years of fighting with insurers, 40 days after her mother passes, they finally get a ruling that she should have been covered all along. And had she been covered all along, who knows how much longer she might have lived, how much better care she might have had. Oh, Lord, I'm just getting started. Tracy McMillan is our guest. We'll unpack this when we come forward on Tavis.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
I was so excited when I heard this sandwich was back. What's up? This is Mike.
And this is Celia.
And a little thing we love about the Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich
is the symphony of flavors. You can always count on that crispy, tender, juicy chicken. It's so good.
My favorite part is the pimento cheese. Topped off with the honey, it all comes together perfectly. I like the original.
I like the spicy chicken fillet. But either way,
you're getting a winner.
The Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is back with a bite. Try it with the original or spicy filet, now for a limited time. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
On behalf of her precious family, it is with profound sadness that KBLA Talk 1580 announces the passing of our beloved colleague, Robin Aers, on Thursday, December 5th. Robin was a bright light. You could see her radiant smile through the radio. We all respected her immense talent, loved her jovial spirit, celebrated her love of family, and honored her faith in God. Our thoughts and prayers are with Robin's entire family, most especially her husband Rob and her twin daughters Brooklyn and Madison. We ask you to join us in praying for the Aers family as they navigate the difficult days ahead. In her honor, all this week, we're broadcasting the best of the Rob Report on KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Tracy McMillan, whose book is called The White Bonus, 5 Families and the Cash Value of Racism in America. We're going to get to that part of the story. And by that, I mean how a guy like Luigi Mangione, who grew up as a white male, in wealth, in power, in privilege, in private school, can end up in a situation like this. Put a pin in that for the moment. I promise we'll come back to it in a few minutes here. Before I get back to your precious mother, though, Tracy, first of all, thank you for coming on. Thank you for telling that story. I can't even imagine what it must have been like to have endured that hell all those years trying to save and protect and preserve and just embrace your mother after this accident. But I am curious as to what you thought, how this impacted you, how it hit you as the story of Luigi Mangione started to unfold. For that matter, let me just back up. The minute that I saw the news, the minute the news broke that this CEO had been murdered in broad daylight in New York, I knew what it was. I mean, it didn't take any rocket science. It didn't take a rocket science degree to realize that somewhere along the way, whoever did this, if it wasn't personal, which is to say, you know, the CEO was sleeping with somebody's wife or something, if it wasn't personal, then I knew immediately this is somebody, obviously, who has a grievance with this industry. Maybe United Healthcare specifically, but they have a grievance with this industry. When you saw this and the story starts to unfold, and you know all that you went through with your mom, what was going? Take me inside your head and your heart at that moment.
I mean, no surprise at all, just dark humor, right? I mean, I think anybody who was actually legitimately surprised or shocked by that just means they've never had to deal with actual health insurance in this country. Yeah. I mean, the system is so punitive and vicious, you know, and I write about this in The White Bonus, right? Like there's this way in which I think white folks have really, they've thought that if you sort of set up systems that are about who deserves what, it's only going to get used against people who aren't white. And what has happened is you set up these punitive, sort of like nitpicky systems about you got to prove you deserve some help or not. And they just keep morphing into profit-seeking devices for companies, right? And so being white, ultimately, it does not protect you from this stuff, right? There's, you know, I think compared to black folks, right, you can look at the numbers, right? Denial rates for even just preventative care, right, are higher for black folks and other people of color than for white folks. They're still not great for white folks, right? And I think, you know, when I think about my mom's story, right, if you're just looking at this in terms of sort of equity between races, right? I mean, nobody should have to go through my mom's experience. I'm sure it would have been worse and we would have had more different difficulties if we hadn't have been white, right? But I mean, then you're holding up my mom's experience as the thing you're aspiring to, right? And I think for me, you know, whenever these kinds of issues come up, I really just spend a lot of time thinking about like how bad we have let it get, folks, right? And you know, it is not surprising in any way, shape, or form except the immorality of murder, right? But somebody taking out a healthcare CEO, there's a lot about that I think makes sense to folks and certainly feeds like a real sort of dark schadenfreude for folks.
Yeah. How did you feel? Take me back to that day, 40 days after your mom's passing, when you finally get a ruling from a court that your mom should have been covered all along.
Well, this is the wild thing. I did not know about that until I was reporting the white bonus. My family didn't know about that.
Mm.
Somewhere the communication with the attorney had broken down, and it's not right. I don't have a capacity to litigate whether or not the attorney actually told us or not, because when the jury said you should have had care, but we're not going to give you all the money, and the company appealed, as far as my family was concerned, we had lost.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there was no immediate fixing of care. My mom had been, talk about profit seeking, right? Like a for-profit adult foster care home masquerading as a brain rehabilitation center had taken her in, saying, "We'll keep her until the court settles this, because we're pretty sure you'll get it." And then they would have had unlimited ability to charge. I mean, in the 80s, they were charging my family, billing my family $9,000 to $15,000 a month for her care, right?
Mm.
So they're thinking they're going to get this windfall. They don't get it, so they evict her, right? And so for us, it doesn't matter that we won on the merits, right? We lost because she had to go into a terrible Medicaid home, right? That within 6 months of her going in, right, was shut down because patients were dying and had been beaten and things like that. So I think, but when I'm doing this reporting for the white bonus and I come across this and I go and I interview the attorney and I realize that actually she should have had care the whole time. I mean, I just think the bitterness, right? I don't know that I'll ever get over that. And I don't think most people in this country will when they have to fight insurers the way that we do just for basic care.
The other part of your story, your mother's story, that just emotionally devastated me when I read the book and that particular chapter about your childhood. The part of the story that devastated me, Tracy, was the fact that she was in this situation not because she was drinking, but because she was hit by a drunk driver. And it just raises a profound and fundamental question for me. What kind of country are we living in? What are we doing in America? When through no fault of your own, you're driving down the street with your two precious babies in the car, a drunk driver comes across the lane and hits you, you end up with severe brain injuries, and you can't get covered for that. You're hit by a drunk driver. And you still, on top of that, your family has to fight with an insurance company. It makes my skin crawl when I think about that, Tracy. That she was hit by a drunk driver. And still, for all those years, her family is fighting with insurance companies to cover her.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. And I will say, there's a lot of anger I have about that. I'm very careful about my driving habits. But for me, I think a lot of it also comes down to not just, we had to fight for my mom's care, but what a devastating and sort of damaging experience that is for a family unit. I write about this in the white bonus. My childhood meant that I was my mother's part-time caregiver, right, at age 8, 9, 10, right, when my dad had to run errands, right? Because part of it early on, right, is that my family was lower middle class, but we weren't poor enough to qualify for Medicaid or any kind of state help. We're in a rural area. There was no home care industry at the time, right? So we just had to cobble it together, leaving 8-year-olds in charge of, their mom, right, for a long time, right? And then how that contorts the relationships in my family. I no longer have a relationship with my father in part because of that stuff, right? And I really would trace a lot of those difficulties to the strain of this experience, right? Nobody is perfect, right? But my dad was dealt an incredibly difficult hand, right? And then, our family was not up for managing that well. And it was devastating for all of us.
Yeah. Clearly, even though you didn't want to go in depth, and I respect that you have your issues with drunk drivers. I get that. Makes perfect sense. Clearly, you have an issue with insurance companies. I totally get that. But I wonder whether or not, even though they finally got to the right decision, the court that is, when they ruled that your mother was entitled to no-fault benefits, Is there any indictment here of the court system and how long it took to get to that conclusion?
I mean, I think anytime you sort of say somebody's health coverage is contingent on a lawsuit with a major corporation, that's ridiculous, right? Like, people will die. I mean, I don't have any proof to back this up, but I would be shocked if nobody at that insurance company thought, well, she's probably going to die pretty soon anyway, so we just have to run out the clock, right? Because that's what they did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I will also say I came out of that really upset also with the attorney, right? Because what was going on at the time, right, is this personal injury attorney doesn't get paid except on the amount of the settlement. So he had sort of sent my mother into this for-profit foster care home because it was a scam, right? And it ends up becoming part of a national sort of hearing, like in Congress and things like that. But this company, right, was bilking the families of brain injured patients, saying that they could make them better when it wasn't possible, right? And charging these astronomical numbers that they could get insurance companies to pay for. So the attorney doesn't care that those numbers are ridiculous because his settlement's going to be based on it. He doesn't care that she's not getting real care, right? There's no concern about how to make sure my mother is getting actual care. The only thing that is sort of being talked about is who is responsible and how can we gin up the numbers as high as possible. And ultimately that sort of backfired for us because when it got in front of the jury, right, they said, yes, she should have had care, but these numbers are way out of whack and we can't pay for that. And it gave enough of an opportunity to this corporation, right, to say, well, hold on, that means we didn't really lose. And so, right, and they start challenging the decision and sort of draw it out and can run out the clock on my mom's life.
How do you imagine, Tracy, that your mom's life post the accident might have been different had she been given the respect that she deserved by her insurance company?
I think we would have had the capacity for at-home care to some degree. And I think, I mean, even within the sort of, without changing a whole lot about that story, if she just stayed at the overpriced traumatic sort of like foster care place, which was profiteering, but at least was stable and was not a disaster zone, right? Like the nursing home that she got sent into, I mean, within a month, she was actually out of there because she had pneumonia because they weren't sitting her up, right? And I remember going into this home as a teenager, right? And there were, people wandering around in stupors, half clothed, wandering out into the parking lot with us, right? It was like a horribly run home, right? And there were dozens of people whose families, right, had to depend on that care. So my mom at least would have been spared that, right? And I think for us, that would have mattered.
I am curious as to how all of this has impacted the way you deal in real time with whoever your health insurer is these days. Like when you've been through something like that, and I'm not laughing. My point is that you've been to hell and back dealing with your mom and her insurance company. And you mentioned earlier, how serious you are about your own driving habits, given that your mom was hit by a drunk driver. But I'm just curious, how has all this impacted the way you deal with your health insurer when you have to?
Sometimes I have panic attacks, like when I'm talking to folks on the phone, which I didn't realize for a long time, right, until I was like talking to a therapist. I was like, I completely lost my mind on the phone with this person. And she's like, that sounds like a panic attack. And I was like, oh, yeah. I have a real hard time with that. And also, right, so I think sometimes I'm my worst person on those phone calls, especially, because I've changed around insurers and sometimes I've had real bad insurers where the people working those lines are not trained to be helpful, and really lose my mind. But I've also had like some really profound moments, right, where I remember once I spent something like 6 hours in a day on the phone with this woman because I was like, I'm not hanging up until we fix this, so you're going to stay on the phone with me, right? So we go through all this. At some point, I lose my temper completely, and we're talking, and we go through it, right? Like it's like an arc of a relationship. When we get through it, and I was like, I'm so sorry I lost my temper. I know it's not your fault. It's just I'm beside myself about this. My mom died because of stuff like this. And this woman, right, she's probably making $10, $12 an hour in some call center somewhere. She said something along the lines of, it's okay, ma'am. I know what it's like. My baby, she needs like a nebulizer and the insurance company won't give it to her. So we keep ending up in the ER and all this, right? And I was just like, man, we're all just caught in this mess together.
And
right?
And she's working for an insurer.
She's working for an insurer, right?
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is bad. It is a bad scene.
I got 90 seconds left. I'll give it to you. There's no naivete here. No naivete in the question, or no naivete in the reality of our situation. But what ought the health insurance company, in terms of takeaways, right quick here, what ought they be talking about? What ought they be realizing in this moment?
I mean, I think they should be realizing that this is going to need to get nationalized if we want to preserve like basic sort of civil society in this country, right? Like, it cannot keep going like this, right? We cannot keep letting healthcare be a for-profit endeavor the way that it is in this country. It's just too many people are dying, too many people are hurt.
Yeah.
And, that's not going to happen quick.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the alternative is going to be, I don't think that will be the last CEO who faces violence if we don't get this under control.
I think you're right. In 30 seconds, since you wrote the book about the white bonus, tell me right quick what you make of the fact that Mr. Mangione grew up in white privilege.
I mean, Mr. Mangione, right, also is 26 years old and just aged out of his parents' insurance coverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, whatever, a lot of parents, I think, are you get to 26, you got to figure it out. I have no idea what the deal is with that man's family, right?
Yeah.
But I think when you start having to face that system on your own at 26,
yes.
right? I mean, that fear, and especially as a young person, if you've been healthy and all of a sudden you're facing a future where you don't have the same kind of mobility
That's right.
and sort of health that you've had, I think that can feel like a terminal diagnosis.
Nope.
And honestly, if you think the rest of your life is arguing with health insurers, I can see being desperate.
Yep, that's basically what he wrote on Reddit. I digress. Tracy McMillan is author of the book, The White Bonus, 5 Families and the Cash Value of Racism in America. I highly recommend it. Tracy, thanks for sharing. Good to have you on, and happy holidays to you.
Thanks so much, Tavis. Happy holidays.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson remains in custody. The NYPD is concerned about copycat crimes and is monitoring social media to prevent further incidents. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are both condemning the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson and criticized the insurance industry, calling for systemic changes while denouncing violence. Firefighters are battling the Franklin fire in Malibu, which has destroyed homes and displaced thousands. The fire, fueled by Santa Ana winds, has grown to 3,000 acres now and caused widespread power outages. And the Washington Nationals won the 2025 MLB Draft Lottery with a 10.2% chance. The LA Angels and Seattle Mariners follow in second and third. The draft is on July 13th during All-Star Weekend in Atlanta, Georgia. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Save more this holiday season by becoming a My Lowe's Rewards member. Don't miss new member deals dropping every week, like $15 off a purchase of $50 or more on select Bounty, Charmin, and Puffs paper products. Join for free today. Subject to terms and conditions. Visit Lowe's.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC's women's basketball team had no trouble with Fresno State last night at the Galen Center. The Trojans, ranked 5th in the country, dominated Fresno State 89-40. Juju Watkins and Kiki Irefin combined to score more points than the entire Fresno State team. Irefin led the Trojans with 24 points and 12 rebounds. Watkins finished with 21 points and 5 assists. The 9-1 Trojans are back in action Sunday against Elon at the Galen Center. Kawhi Leonard practiced with the Clippers Tuesday for the first time this season. Leonard has been doing rehab and treatment on his right knee since training camp. He was held out of contact activity, but participated in most of the team's offense and defense drills. Clippers coach Ty Lue said there is still no timetable for when Leonard might be able to play. The Clippers are 14-11 without Leonard and have the 6th best record in the Western Conference. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Hi, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been hearing me guest host here on KBLA Talk 1580, and I'm having a blast. But I'm excited about joining the official lineup here at KBLA Talk 1580 starting Monday, January 6th at 1 p.m. Start your day with First Things First and Dominique DePrima at 6 a.m. Check out Tavis Smiley at 9 a.m. Tune into Truth Time with Dr. Cornell West and Nina Turner at 12 noon, and then tap in with me on The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show at 1 p.m. weekdays. I served 17 years in the U.S. Congress, and I can tell you it's going to be a rough 4 years, so let's navigate this journey together. It's The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, starting Monday, January 6th at 1 p.m. on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Thanks to Total Wine, you saved more on all the gifts for the ones you adore. Wine, spirits, beers, all nestled on shelves. Got some advice from our helpful elves. Oh, so many gifts to explore when you go to Total Wine and more. Bottles so delightful, whoa. Priced so amazingly low.
Curbside pickup and delivery available, and the lowest prices for over 30 years only at Total Wine & More.
Drink responsibly. B21.
1 in 3 children born today will get diabetes. This sad prediction by the Centers for Disease Control will come true if millions of Americans don't improve their lifestyles, especially by changing what they eat, how much they eat, and how active they are every day. Every 23 seconds, another American gets diabetes. Stop diabetes before it starts. To learn more, contact the American Diabetes Association or download our free diabetes education programs at learningaboutdiabetes.org.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
A conversation now, as promised, about Donald Trump's efforts to weaponize state power for his radical policies. We know that he will have on January 20th all the reins of the federal government. He has the House, he has the Senate, he has the White House, he has the Supreme Court. He has all the reins at the federal level. But what is his agenda at the state level when it comes to weaponizing state power to advance his radical agenda? What is his plan? And more importantly, what does the pushback look like? Pleased to be now in conversation with the former Secretary of State in Illinois, Jesse White. Mr. White, how are you, sir? Good to have you on the program.
I'm glad to be on board.
It's good to have you on. Let me just jump in and make the most of the time that we do have here. We have had ad nauseum, ad infinitum in this country, as you well know, a debate about states' rights. Let me just start broad, and we'll narrow as we move through the time that we have here. What's your sense of where we are on that pendulum of states' rights now that Donald Trump is headed back to the White House?
Well, I say it perished a thought as to what the state will become as a result of Donald Trump's promotion to the presidency of the United States.
Mm-hmm. But my question, though, is whether or not you think that we're going to see a retread of this conversation about what states can control, the authority that states ought to have. I'm just trying to get a sense of how you think the pendulum is going to swing back to the states.
Well, I'm no longer in state government. I served 16 years actually 24 years as Illinois Secretary of State, the longest served in the history of the state and the country.
Right.
And I'm really disappointed in the fact that Donald Trump is the President of the United States, to be very honest with you. I think it's a violation of all laws of human decency for him to be promoted to that position. But the bottom line is this. I just don't have a lot of respect for him, and I don't have a lot of support for him. I just think that this country will not benefit much from his leadership.
Yeah. So, given that you were in state government for as long as you were, what's your sense of the way that states that don't align with the agenda that we all know he's going to push? We've all seen Project 2025. He tried to deny he knew anything about it. He tried to distance himself from it. But we know now that is the agenda, as if we didn't really know then. But what's your sense of what states have to do to push back against him and the policies he's going to advance that don't make sense for residents of various states?
I just hope that the states will stand strong against his efforts to push forth his agenda. I just think that his agenda is in violation of all laws of human decency, and I don't believe that the people of the states will benefit from his leadership.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your time as Secretary of State in Illinois and what you learned then that might help other secretaries of state navigate these dark days.
Well, first of all, I'm the longest-serving Secretary of State in the history of the state of Illinois, as well as the first African-American to hold a position. I started out in a town called Alton, Illinois, and moved to Chicago at age 7, and moved to the near north side of the city of Chicago, which is at the time was an Italian neighborhood. It later became Cabrini Green, and then a fellow by the name of George Dunn, who was the president of the Cook County Board, asked me to seriously consider running for that position. And I said that I didn't think that I would do very well. Being an elected official, I believed that I could play a supportive role, and that would be the best that I could do for the party. And he said, well, we think that you will do quite well being the state representative from the district. And so every weekend I would go skiing up at Schiff's Mountain in Massillon, Michigan. So I went down this hill that I had never been able to negotiate about 16 times. And I came back to Chicago saying, if I could handle this hill, I could certainly handle the political arena. So I indicated to him that I would take on the job or take on the challenge of running the position. And I asked him, I said, what is the racial makeup? He said, oh, it's just 85% white, 10% black, 5% others. I said, that's a tough hill to climb. And so he said, I think you would do quite well. And I said, what are the boundary lines? And he gave me the boundary lines. I said, I will take on the challenge. And as it turned out, I served for 16 years as a state lawmaker. And then I ran for a position called the Cook County Court of Deeds. I served there for 6 years. And then I was told not to waste my time, tell my friends and neighbors not to waste their time, their efforts, or their funds, and help me to become the next Secretary of State. And so being a former military person, I didn't take that lightly. So I took on the job of running for state representative and ended up winning and being the first African-American to hold a position and the longest African-American in the state as well as the country to hold a position of state Secretary of State.
Yeah. You mentioned two things. You mentioned your time. Well, at least one thing you mentioned. Your time in the military. In what ways did that inform? Did that aid and abet your service as Secretary of State?
Well, it showed me that whatever you take on a job, you should take on the responsibility that goes with it. If someone says that you cannot achieve, you say, watch me, and you put forth a genuine effort to be the best you could be. And that's what happened in my case.
Mm-hmm. I know because a little birdie told me that there's an interesting story in your past about being a young boy and seeing a guy in person named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When we come forward, I'm going to ask you to share that story with our audience. This audience knows that I regard Dr. King as the greatest American this country's ever produced, and so I want to hear your story about seeing Dr. King long before you were Secretary of State in Illinois, seeing Dr. King. I'm always fascinated by these stories, and we'll hear it together when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening. Charitable listening. It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Bad Ash Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Jesse White. Mr. White, tell me about seeing Dr. King.
Well, I graduated from Walnut High School, which is now Lincoln Park Academy. I played baseball, basketball, and I had the great pleasure of playing in the band and orchestra. I played drums. And then I received a scholarship to Alabama State University in Montgomery, Alabama. It was Alabama State College at the time. And I lived in Dillard Hall, and a fellow by the name of Eugene Sawyer, he later became the mayor of the city of Chicago. He and I had lived in the same dormitory. And when I played baseball, basketball, and taught gymnastics in college, Dr. K would meet me after every basketball game and give me $20. That was $20 was legal then. I don't think it's legal now. But the bottom line is this: I attended this church in the northern part of Montgomery, Alabama, a fellow by the name of Ralph Abernathy.
Oh, yeah.
I was a scroller, which is the pledgee for the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. And 15 of us, or the pledgees, had to attend this church in the northern part of Montgomery. And when we arrived there may have been 20 parishioners seated, and then with the 15 of us, the numbers started to swell. And the next week we came, there had to be over 100 people. Then the next thing I knew, people were standing outside the door to listen to this Dr. Martin Luther King. And later on, he was promoted to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in downtown Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
And as I indicated before, he used to give me $20 after every game. He gave me counseling, guidance, and helped me to be the kind of a person I am today. And so I have a philosophy of life that says that when you come to this world and you get it, you give it back, and you must do something good for someone every day. That's how I run my life. And I really got my inspiration to coach and found a group of young people called the Jesse White Tumbling Team, and we've been around for exactly 65 years, and we do about 1,500 shows a year. We've traveled all over the world: Zara, Croatia, Belize, Israel, China, Tokyo, Japan, Hong Kong, Big Ten, NBA, NFL, you name it. And out of the 65 years I've been the coaching father of the team, we've had over 20,000 young people come to it. And the last count, to my knowledge, less than 20 have gotten themselves into trouble with the law. And when they say they'd rather be in trouble with the police than to be in trouble with Mr. White, I think you know the rest of the story.
Yeah, I get it.
It's called tough love.
No, I get it. And trust me, I know how legendary you are in Chicago with the tumblers. I'm coming to that here in just a few minutes. We're going to close talking about the tumblers. So it's on my docket of things to talk to you about. You can't talk to Jesse White without talking about the tumblers. Again, he is iconic in the city of Chicago. And as you just heard, around the country and around the world, people know the tumblers, and we'll talk about that in a second here. I want to go back to Dr. King just for a second, though. It is amazing to hear you tell that story and to realize all these years later the impact that your interaction with King had on you then, and you've held on to it for all these years.
Yes, and I pass it on to the kids I work with, and it has been a part of my philosophy of life. It's also been the way in which I run my life, and I share my experiences with others as well. It's primarily with the young people who make up my team. And as I indicated before, we've had over 20,000 young people, and the kids have to maintain at least a C average in school. They have to be leafless, smokeless, and pipeless the only time they can practice pharmacies after they've earned a white coat. You know what I'm talking about, no drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we teach them to love their fellow man and woman, never dislike anyone because of race, creed, or color. I've experienced that coming in from Alton, Illinois to Alabama State in Montgomery, Alabama. And when you've experienced segregation, discrimination, you know how bad it makes you feel. You know how deep it cuts, and you don't ever do that to another human being.
Yeah.
And I remind my young people in life that I want them to always look up and aim high, and the only time I want them to look down in life is to tie their shoes. So we have been quite successful with these young people where we provide them with a scholarship. And then when they, with all of the kids who are in school, and all of them must be in school in order to be a part of my program, they have to turn their report card in. The report card has to maintain at least all the kids have maintained the C average. The grades 4 below par, he cannot participate with the program. And so they'd say to you, I'd rather be in trouble with the police than be in trouble with Mr. White. You know how tough to love is.
No, I get it. It makes all the sense in the world if you know who Jesse White is and what how he moves and how he directs these tumblers. We'll talk more about the tumblers when we come forward in our remaining moments with him. I was just laughing internally. Mr. White was talking about telling the story about being a scroller, and he explained, you're a scroller when you're pledging, Kappa Alpha Psi. Yeah, I know something about that, Mr. White. I was just laughing. He must not know I'm a Kappa, so maybe I should tell him that. So I was once a scroller myself, Mr. White. I digress for now. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say, when we come forward?
Because he's not going back.
And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Ever have one of those days where your gut just feels blah?
Ugh, yes.
Occasional bloating or gas could be signs that your gut is out of balance, but Align Probiotic can help. Align 24/7 Digestive Support is a daily use probiotic with a unique strain to help relieve occasional digestive issues. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand. So when you feel the signs, it's time to try Align. Align Probiotic. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
The revolution will not be televised.
This is Brother Cornell West. My dear brothers and sisters, I'm full of joy and delight to announce that I'm joining the precious family at KBLA Talk 1580, founded and led by my dear, dear brother Tavis Smiley himself. Yes, the name of the show is Truth Time, and I'll be working with the inimitable Nina Turner out of Cleveland, Ohio, sister of great vision, and we will be on weekdays at 12 noon. We will be following Brother Tavis Smiley's show. We will begin Monday, January the 6th. That's right, Monday, January the 6th. Get ready for a different kind of insurrection. We coming with Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer and Curtis Mayfield and Aretha Franklin, and gonna add a little Gil Scott Heron too, as Nina Simone sits at the center. That's right.
The revolution will be live.
That's what we gonna do. Please come with us on this fantastic voyage.
The revolution will put you in the driver's seat.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Just a few minutes left here with Jesse White. Mr. White, tell me more. You talked about the tumblers. Let me just ask you about the creation of the tumblers, and I'm specifically interested in how you came to create this group and what that link is to the exposure you had to King when you were a kid.
Well, I was asked to put on a gym show. I taught school during the day.
Right.
Worked for the park district at night. Was asked to put on a gym show by my park supervisor. From the one gym show in December of 1959 came the Jesse White tumbling team. We right now I've had over 20,000 kids, as I indicated before, and only less than 20 have gotten themselves in the trouble with the law. It's been able to combat juvenile delinquency. So, and then that, as I indicated before, we've traveled all over the world, and we've done commercials, movies, performed for the NBA, NFL, the list goes on and on. And as I indicated before, the kids must maintain at least a C average in school, have to love their fellow man and woman, and then be the best they could be in life. I say, always look up and aim high, and or tell them what you look down is to tie your shoes. I also forgot to tell you, too, I served in the military, not once, not twice, but 3 times, a paratrooper, guardsman, and reservist. Did 35 jumps out of a perfect good airplane. You never worry about the jump. It's always a sudden stop.
Yeah.
And then I've just done a lot of things in life, and I've passed all the things that I've experienced onto the young people, all designed to help them to be the best that they could be and to become a positive force in society.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, and we appreciate it. I say we, I mean the city of Chicago that I'm speaking on behalf of right now, like I can do that, like I'm the mayor. But in Chicago and beyond, we appreciate all that you've done, serving as Secretary of State, serving in the military, and most especially founding the Tumblers, still going strong. 60-some years, 65 years later, they're still touring and entertaining people all around the country and around the world. Mr. White, good to have you on, sir. Happy holidays to you.
It's only the best to you, sir. As they would say in my neighborhood, You the man.
You the man. I'm just a man talking to the man, but I appreciate that, sir. Happy holidays to you. When we come forward in our final hour today, a couple of conversations. This story is fascinating to me. I've never talked to Robert Maripol, but I know the story of his parents. And we were talking to Tracy McMillan earlier in today's program about her mother and what happens to a child when your parent goes through something traumatic. So the story of Robert Maripol is that he's the son of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. If you know anything about world history, then you've heard about Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. I'll let Robert Maripol tell you about that when we come forward in this next hour. But it's a cautionary tale about what happens in a society when people end up on enemies list. They end up being outed. They end up being targeted. And then they end up being executed. Again, it's a cautionary tale as we head toward Trump 2.0 with his enemies list. Cautionary tale about the politics of fear and paranoia in a particular republic. So we'll talk to Robert Maripol at the top of the final hour today. And then we'll be joined by Daryl Chill Mitchell. We all know Chill. And it's amazing to me when I considered last night how many years it's been since Daryl had that accident that landed him in that wheelchair. And all the good work he has done over these years advocating for the disabled here in Hollywood. And we'll have some fun also because it's the 25th anniversary of the sci-fi comedy classic Galaxy Quest. So a good final hour in front of us when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson remains in custody. The NYPD is concerned about copycat crimes and is monitoring social media to prevent further incidents. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are both condemning the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson and criticized the insurance industry, calling for systemic change